The ledger sat open on the plantation desk, its pages yellowed with age and sour with the dampness that rose from the Louisiana earth. Vincent Habert's hand did not tremble as he held the lantern closer. It was unnervingly steady, a sign of the dread that had settled into his bones like a permanent chill. This was not the ledger for cotton yields or sugar profits. This was his private journal, a separate, hidden column of a different sort, tracking something that curdled the blood and turned the whispers in the quarters into a silent, screaming truth. The entries stretched back 7 years. Each line was a fresh offense against nature, or so it seemed. Blue eyes, blonde hair, skin the color of cream, darkening only a little with sun. All born to enslaved women across 3 parishes. All different mothers, all bearing children who looked nothing like them. Nothing like their recorded fathers, nothing like the community they were born into. They were ghosts in reverse, solid, living evidence of something spectral and vile. The whispers had become a current, a dark river flowing alongside the Mississippi itself. They traveled with the traders and the runaways, in the hushed exchanges of house servants who polished silver while their masters' voices shook with uneasy speculation, and in the knowing horror-stricken silence of the midwives. These old women, who had seen every tragedy birth could offer, now felt a new kind of fear. For someone was moving through the night, fathering these impossible children. A phantom who left no footprint, no sound. Only the evidence written in the faces of infants who should not exist. Before we continue with the story of Louisiana's most disturbing secret, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this. I want to hear from you. Leave a comment telling me what state or city you're listening from. Now, let's uncover what really happened in those Louisiana parishes between 1837 and 1844. This mystery would consume 7 years, fray and sever the fragile bonds of families, end lives in slow, quiet suffocation, and reveal a truth so calculated, so coldly rational in its cruelty, that it would make even the most hardened plantation owner question the abyss they all inhabited. But in 1837, when the first of these children drew breath, they were merely anomalies, curiosities. What began as a single, unsettling exception would become a pattern, a deliberate design that would shake the very foundations of a society built on the idea that some people were things, and in doing so, expose how that very principle could be weaponized in the most intimate way imaginable. Louisiana, in the late 1830s, was a place of violent contrast. New Orleans was a throbbing, decadent heart of American wealth, its port swallowing and disgorging fortunes in sugar, cotton, and human flesh. The air in the city was thick with the scent of jasmine, coffee, and decay. French and Spanish ghosts lingered in the wrought iron lace and stucco walls, in the patois that danced through the markets. It was a place of opera and agony, of ballrooms that glittered above a foundation of unspeakable human cost. Beyond the city's gaslight glow, the plantation economy ruled with a brutal, monotonous rhythm. The parishes of St. James, St. John the Baptist, and Ascension were not the sprawling, isolated domains of cotton country. Here, sugar was king, and its reign was one of industrialized brutality. Sugar required a factory pace. During the grinding season, the plantations hummed and roared 24 hours a day. Enslaved people worked shifts that blurred into a single, endless ordeal of 20 hours of cutting, hauling, feeding, furious, grinding mills, and tending bubbling kettles that could strip flesh from bone. The mortality rate was a calculated business expense. It was cheaper to work a person to death and buy another than to slow the machine. This was the world, a world of close quarters, interconnected properties, and rapid gossip along the river road into which these strange children were born. A world where a human being was a ledger entry, a body with a price, a thing with no claim to its own flesh. The density of the plantations meant secrets were hard to keep. A birth, a death, a punishment on news traveled faster than the steamboats. This very interconnectedness is what made the emerging pattern so terrifying. It wasn't a random tragedy. It was a repeating signal, and a signal implied a sender. The first plantation to record the signal was Bellamont, a mid-sized sugar operation owned by the anxious, perpetually worried Felipe Duch. His overseer was Vincent Habert, a man who stood apart in his profession. Habert was not a brute. He was an administrator of misery, believing in control through meticulous record-keeping and calculated pressure rather than indiscriminate lash. He could read and write in French and English, and he noticed everything. It was Habert who, in March of 1837, was summoned to a cramped cabin in the quarters. The mother was Marie, a woman whose spirit had been cauterized years before when she witnessed her own mother being consumed by the grinding mill. The child was a girl. The attending midwife, Josephine, a woman born in St. Domingue who had seen everything, felt her ancient hands freeze as she cleaned the newborn. The baby had skin like parchment, hair like white silk, and eyes the color of a winter sky. "Does she look like anyone you know?" Josephine asked Marie, the question heavy with meaning. Marie's silence was a scream. Her partner, Thomas, took one look and stated, flat and final, "That's not mine." The bond between them, fragile to begin with, shattered. The child, named Claire, became a living ghost in the quarters, a beautiful, blue-eyed accusation that no one could voice. Hubbert, ever the recorder, made a private entry in his journal. He soothed Duchamp, who wanted only for the anomaly to disappear into the ledger, listed under Thomas's name. But Hebert knew. He felt the first thread of a pattern pull taut in his mind. 14 months later, the pattern repeated. 6 miles upriver at the Riverside Plantation, a house laundress named Delphine gave birth to a boy with the same impossible features. Her partner Samuel rejected them both. The overseer, a cruel man named Gideon Frost, could beat a confession out of no one. The child, Jean, was another entry in a growing, silent ledger, and it continued. A cook's assistant at Oakmont, a serving girl at St. Clair, a laundress at Magnolia Grove. Over the next 2 years, 5 more children arrived, each a perfect, pale replica of a mystery. Blonde hair, blue eyes, features carved from Northern European stock, appearing in the sweltering Louisiana quarters. The mothers uniformly insisted on their fidelity to their recorded partners. Their partners uniformly disowned them. A wave of silent, seething trauma swept through the women, and a current of suspicion and fear electrified the entire enslaved community. Vincent Hay, his private map now dotted with locations, began to look for a common factor. Not just the what, but the who. He tracked visits, social calls, medical emergencies, and a name emerged, always in the periphery, always just out of direct sight. Dr. Marcus Levine. Levine was the community's trusted physician, elegant, educated in Paris, discreet to a fault, with pale blonde hair and striking blue eyes, a mirror of the very children appearing in the quarters. Habert's blood ran cold as he connected the dates. Levine had been present at each plantation in the crucial months before each conception. A social call here, a medical treatment there, always with access, always above suspicion. Convinced but powerless, Hebert took his meticulously compiled evidence to the one man he believed might act, Judge Armand Thibodeau. He laid out the map, the timeline, the damning pattern. Thibodeau, a man of law and order, listened intently, his face darkening, but his final words were a bucket of cold reality. Even if you are right, Vincent, what law has he broken? The question hung in the humid air. Under Louisiana law, enslaved women were not persons. They were property. Property could not be violated in the way Hebert implied. It could only be damaged. And where was the damage? The children, after all, were healthy, new, valuable property. The law was a fortress, and it protected Levine completely. Thibodeau promised discreet inquiries but warned Hebert to stand down. The plantations, however, would not stand down. The enslaved women, communicating through their own invisible network, began to resist. They refused assignments to the main house, feigned illness, accepted beatings rather than risk being placed in the path of the unseen predator. Productivity fell, tension crackled. The economic order was being subtly sabotaged by a collective, unspoken trauma, and still, the births came. More entries in Habert's secret ledger, 9 than 13. A baker's dozen of living evidence. The scandal could no longer be contained. The whispers became talk, the talk became common knowledge, and finally, the storm reached Dr. Levine himself. His response was not to deny, but to summon. In September 1842, he invited the affected planters, Judge Thibodeau, and a baffled Vincent Hebert to his home. The gathering had the surreal air of a scientific symposium. Levine.com and Immaculates offered brandy, and then calmly confessed, "Yes, gentlemen, I am the father of these children." All of them. The room erupted, but Levine raised a hand, not in plea, but in pedagogical authority. He retrieved a leather-bound journal. "I have conducted an experiment," he explained, his voice cool and clear. "A study on the heritability of racial characteristics. I hypothesized that European traits would dominate African ones in the offspring. These children are my conclusive data." He spoke of breeding programs, of genetic dominance, of the future application of such knowledge. He referenced livestock, husbandry, the improvement of stock. He was not a monster in his own eyes. He was a pioneer, a scientist unburdened by sentimental morality. "You're talking about rape," Hebert finally choked out. Levine turned his placid blue eyes on him. "Rape is a crime against a person, Mr. Hebert. The law is quite clear on the status of the subjects. I have simply utilized available resources for scientific inquiry. I have broken no statute." The horrible, airtight logic of it silenced them all. The system they upheld had provided Levine with both his test subjects and his legal immunity. Judge Thibodeau faced ashen with a moral fury the law could not translate into action, could only banish him. "Leave this parish, or I will find a way to ruin you." Levine smiled, a thin, chilling curve of the lips. "My work here is complete. I have already arranged to relocate to Texas. The frontier offers expanded opportunities for research." Within weeks, he was gone. His journals, the full record of his horrific work, would eventually be destroyed by an executor who found them too evil to preserve. But the children remained. The aftermath was a different kind of devastation. The mothers were left alone with their living reminders, children whose every feature spoke of violation. Some loved them fiercely, through the pain. Others could barely look at them. The fathers of record had long since abandoned their families. The children themselves, like Claire and Jean, grew up as specters too white for the quarters, too legally black and born of a slave for the white world. They were perpetual outsiders, their very beauty a curse that would make some of them targets for exploitation as fancy goods. In the slave markets, Vincent Haber, unable to stomach his role, left Bellemont in 1845. He took his journals with him, the only remaining testament to the crime that wasn't a crime. After the Civil War, he donated them to a historical society. Along with a letter, "I have learned," he wrote, "that sometimes the greatest crimes are those that are perfectly legal." The real crime was not what Dr. Levine did to those women, though that was monstrous enough. The real crime was the system that made it possible. These records are my testimony. The story of Dr. Levine and the 13 children is more than a tale of a singular monster. It is an X-ray of the slavery's core pathology. It reveals a world where the law actively crafted a reality in which such experiments were not just possible, but logically defensible. The horror lies not in the aberration, but in the rule. The children were the evidence. But the evidence of what? Of a system functioning with perfect, terrible precision. Their faces were the mirrors showing the plantation society its own true, dehumanizing reflection, and it was a reflection many could not, or would not, bear to see. What are your thoughts on this case? How does understanding this kind of calculated legal horror change your perception of the past? Do you think there are other stories, similarly buried in ledgers and legal loopholes, waiting to be uncovered? Leave your comments below. If you found this exploration of America's hidden past important, please give this video a like, share it with others, and subscribe for more deep dives into the histories we must not forget. Thank you for listening.